Ethan stepped forward, standing next to Martha. "You should know that we are also investigating the working conditions at Redfield Farm," he declared, his tone unwavering. Hello everyone, welcome to Inspirational True Stories. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any new information. Let's embrace these wonderful emotions together. In a small rural village nestled amid sprawling fields, life was a constant struggle for its residents. The economic challenges were palpable, with the sun-drenched landscape betraying little of the hardships that unfolded in the shadows. Martha, a resilient woman in her late 40s, embodied the spirit of her community. Her life had not been easy. She had seen her fair share of trials, the most pressing being the dire state of her home. The roof leaked and the walls bore the scars of years without proper care. With little income to speak of, Martha resorted to selling eggs by the roadside, a modest endeavor that barely scraped together enough funds for the repairs her home desperately needed. Martha's character shone through her hardships. She was strong, not just in her resolve but in her heart. Despite her own financial struggles, she had a natural inclination to help others. Neighbors often found solace in her presence, and children knew they could count on her kindness. She would share what little she had, offering food and comfort to those in need, even if it meant she had to sacrifice her own meager supplies. Her compassion was a beacon in the often dim landscape of their lives. One fateful afternoon, as Martha arranged her goods on a weathered table by the roadside, she noticed a young boy named Ethan. He was standing alone, his brow furrowed with worry, as he scanned the horizon for a bus that would never arrive. Martha's heart ached at the sight of him. She could see that he was troubled, and an overwhelming urge to help welled up inside her. As he approached, she engaged him in conversation, discovering that he had missed his bus while trying to reach his father after a difficult family situation. The weight of his predicament pressed heavily upon him, and in that moment, Martha felt an unbreakable connection with the boy. With her own funds limited, Martha made a life-changing decision. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her last $30. "Here," she said, handing the money to Ethan, "this should help you get to your father safely." His eyes widened in disbelief, and tears brimmed with gratitude. "I'll pay it forward," he promised earnestly, as he took the money with trembling hands. Martha watched him disappear down the road, a sense of fulfillment blossoming in her chest, yet unaware of the profound impact this small act of kindness would have on both their lives in the years to come. While life did not improve much for Martha in the years that followed, the memory of her encounter with Ethan lingered like a warm glow in her heart. She faced harsh working conditions and increasingly difficult challenges as the new farm manager. Henry Walters neglected the needs of the workers, making their lives even harder. But through it all, her spirit remained unbroken. Her friendship with Helen, a former co-worker, became a source of comfort as they reminisced about better days and leaned on each other for support amid their shared struggles. Little did she know the ripples of her compassion were destined to return, bringing unexpected changes to her life and community. On a particularly quiet afternoon, Martha was selling her eggs by the roadside when she noticed a young boy lingering at the bus stop, his small figure cast in shadow against the bright sun. The bus had come and gone, and it was clear he had missed it. Ethan looked around, his brow knitted with worry, and Martha felt a surge of concern wash over her. As she observed him more closely, she could see that he was alone, his expression a mix of anxiety and helplessness. Something deep within Martha stirred. The instinct to help was too strong to ignore. Setting aside her goods, she approached him, her voice gentle. "Hey there, are you okay?" she asked. Ethan glanced up, his wide, innocent eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I missed my bus," he admitted, his voice small. "I was trying to get home to my dad. I can't be late." As they talked, Martha learned that Ethan's home life was far from stable. His father was struggling to make ends meet, and the weight of their family's financial burden rested heavily on his young shoulders. Ethan's vulnerability tugged at Martha's heartstrings, and she realized how precarious his situation truly was. Feeling an urgent need to assist him, she knelt beside him and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're going to be okay," she said. "How far do you need to go to see your dad?" The boy hesitated, clearly unsure of how to answer. After a moment, he reluctantly replied, "It's about 10 miles away, but I don't have any money for the taxi." Martha's heart sank at the thought of him being left to navigate that distance alone, especially with no resources to rely on. Without a second thought, Martha reached into her pocket, where she had been keeping her last $30. It was all she had left after buying groceries for herself that week, but she couldn't let this boy suffer when she had the means to help him. "Take this," she said, pressing the money into his palm. "It should be enough to get you home safely." Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "But I can't take this," he stammered, shaking his head. "It's your money." Martha smiled gently, her voice firm yet warm. "I insist. Just promise me that you'll pay it forward someday, okay?" Ethan nodded, his face lighting up with a mixture of gratitude and relief. "Thank you. I promise." With that, he dashed off down the road, the weight of his worries seemingly lifted by Martha's kindness. As she watched him go, Martha felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her, a feeling that lingered long after he disappeared from sight. It was a small act, but in that moment she knew she had made a difference. Little did she realize that this encounter would set into motion a chain of events that would intertwine their fates in ways she could never have imagined. In the years that followed her heartfelt encounter with Ethan, life for Martha continued to be a relentless struggle. Despite her unwavering spirit, her circumstances remained challenging as she faced the daily grind of selling eggs by the roadside. The meager income provided little more than a hand-to-mouth existence, and home repairs were pushed further down the list of priorities. The roof still leaked, and the walls showed signs of wear, yet Martha pressed on, determined to make the best of her situation. As time passed, the arrival of Henry Walters as the new farm manager introduced a wave of discontent among the workers. Henry was more concerned with profit margins than the well-being of his employees, frequently ignoring their pleas for better working conditions. Martha found herself caught in the crossfire of his neglect, facing longer hours and harsher treatment. The camaraderie she once shared with her fellow workers began to erode, as they all struggled under the weight of his indifference. With each passing day, Martha's hope began to dwindle, and the community's morale sank to an all-time low. Through these hardships, Martha found solace in her friendship with Helen, a former co-worker who shared her struggles. Their bond deepened as they reminisced about the past, recalling the days when the farm was managed with empathy and respect. During their conversations, they would lean on each other, exchanging stories of resilience and determination. Helen often reminded Martha of the importance of kindness, urging her not to lose sight of the compassion that defined her character. Yet, even as she supported others, Martha felt a growing sense of isolation. The weight of her responsibilities pressed down on her, and she often wondered if her sacrifices were in vain. The memories of Ethan and the promise he made to pay it forward lingered in her mind, fueling her resolve to maintain hope in the face of adversity. One afternoon, as Martha tended to her eggs, she noticed a group of workers gathered around the entrance to the farm, murmuring anxiously. Curiosity piqued, she approached to listen. They were discussing rumors of layoffs and further cuts to their already meager wages. The fear was palpable in the air, and Martha's heart sank at the thought of losing what little security they had. If you find it interesting, please comment number 2. If it is not interesting, please press number 1 so we can fix the content to be better and better. Determined to stand up for her fellow workers, Martha rallied them together, urging them to voice their concerns to Henry. She knew that in unity they could find strength to confront the challenges they faced. That evening, she organized a meeting, hoping to empower her peers to take a stand. It was a risky move, but Martha felt compelled to fight for their rights. As the meeting approached, she could sense the weight of uncertainty among her colleagues, but Martha was resolute. The prospect of change felt tantalizingly close, and the memory of Ethan's gratitude fueled her determination. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could turn the tide against the oppression they endured. Yet, in the back of her mind, she wondered if her efforts would be enough to make a lasting difference in their lives, or if they were destined to remain trapped in the cycle of hardship. 10 years had passed since Martha's fateful encounter with Ethan, and her life had changed in ways she could never have anticipated. One sunny afternoon, as she was tending to her roadside stall, she was startled by the rumble of an expensive car approaching her modest home. It rolled to a stop, and out stepped a sharply dressed young man, his demeanor radiating confidence and purpose. It was Ethan, now a successful businessman, accompanied by his father, Jacob. Martha's heart raced as a wave of disbelief washed over her. The boy she had helped all those years ago had transformed into a man before her eyes. Ethan's smile was warm and genuine as he approached her, and the memories of their brief but profound interaction flooded back to Martha. "Martha," he exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. "I can't believe it's really you." Before she could fully process the moment, he enveloped her in a heartfelt hug. The embrace felt like a reunion of old friends, bridging the gap of years filled with struggles and resilience. After stepping back, Ethan's expression shifted to one of gratitude. "I've thought about you every day since that moment you helped me. Your kindness changed my life," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "It inspired me to work hard, and I want to give back." Jacob, standing beside his son, nodded in agreement, his expression softening as he took in the scene. "Martha, we've come to help you," Jacob said, his voice steady and reassuring. "Ethan told me about your situation. We want to repair your home and provide you with the support you deserve." Shock coursed through Martha as she struggled to find her words. She had endured so much hardship over the years, and the thought of receiving such generosity felt surreal. Tears filled her eyes as she took in the magnitude of their offer. "Why would you do this for me?" Martha finally asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Because you showed me that kindness knows no bounds," Ethan replied earnestly. "You made a sacrifice when you had so little. Now it's our turn to lift you up." At that moment, the emotional weight of the past collided with the promise of a better future. Martha felt overwhelmed, her heart swelling with gratitude. However, as they discussed the renovations and plans to improve her living conditions, she noticed Henry Walters watching from a distance, his brow furrowed in disbelief and anger. As the realization of Martha's change in fortunes began to sink in, Henry approached, his demeanor hostile. "What do you think you can just waltz in here and fix everything for her?" He spat, a sneer crossing his face. "She doesn't deserve your pity." Martha's spirit surged. This was her moment not just to reclaim her dignity, but also to confront the man who had contributed to her suffering for so long. "I deserve this opportunity just as much as anyone else," she said firmly, her voice steady. "And I will not allow you to belittle my worth or the worth of those who work alongside me." Ethan stepped forward, standing beside Martha. "You should know that we're also investigating the working conditions here at Redfield Farm," he declared, his tone unwavering. "Change is coming, and it starts now." The tension crackled in the air, and Martha felt a surge of empowerment as she stood tall, ready to embrace the new path that lay ahead, buoyed by the unwavering support of Ethan and Jacob. The climax of her struggle had arrived, marking not just a turning point in her life but a battle against the very forces that had sought to keep her down. As the initial shock of Ethan and Jacob's visit settled, the wheels of transformation began to turn in Martha's life. A contractor named Joe Miller, known for his skill and integrity, was brought in to oversee the renovations of her home. With each passing day, the sound of hammering and construction filled the air, and Martha watched with a mixture of excitement and disbelief as her once dilapidated house slowly transformed into a haven. Walls were repaired, the roof was replaced, and fresh paint brightened every room. Each improvement symbolized not just physical repair but also the healing of her spirit, a promise of a new beginning. Meanwhile, Martha's confrontation with Henry Walters lingered in the air, igniting a shift in the dynamics at Redfield Farm. The workers, inspired by Martha's bravery, began to find their voices as well. They rallied together, sharing their stories of hardship and neglect, fueled by the hope that change was possible. With Ethan and Jacob's backing, they organized a meeting with local officials to bring attention to the dire conditions they faced. Henry's authority was challenged as more and more employees began to speak out against his unfair practices. The day of the meeting arrived, and Martha stood alongside her fellow workers, a sense of solidarity weaving through the group. They were no longer just individuals struggling to survive, they were a united front demanding respect and fair treatment. As they presented their case, the tide began to shift. The officials listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. Martha felt a surge of empowerment, bolstered by the realization that her struggles and those of her colleagues were finally being acknowledged. Back at her home, the renovations were nearing completion. Joe and his crew worked diligently, and Martha found herself increasingly involved in the process. She chose colors for the walls and helped design a cozy garden space where she could grow vegetables and flowers. Each decision felt like a reclaiming of her life, a step toward her own dreams that had long been sidelined. The once lonely house now buzzed with activity and purpose, filled with laughter and the chatter of friends who came to visit and support her. When the renovations were completed, Ethan and Jacob hosted a small celebration in her honor. Friends and neighbors gathered, filling her home with warmth and laughter. Martha looked around at the familiar faces and felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had not only gained a beautiful home but also a community that stood behind her. In that moment, she recognized the profound impact of kindness, how her single act of compassion had created a ripple effect, inspiring hope and change not just in her own life, but in the lives of those around her. However, Henry Walters was not done. As Martha reveled in her newfound joy, she learned that he was planning to retaliate against her and the workers who had spoken out. Whispers of his resentment reached her ears, but Martha refused to be intimidated. She had faced so much already and was determined to stand her ground. She understood that true change required resilience and unity. With Ethan and Jacob by her side, and with the support of her community, Martha prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to fight for justice and dignity for herself and her friends. The struggle was far from over, But Martha now had hope, a powerful force that would propel her forward into the future. The culmination of Martha's journey arrived with a profound sense of renewal and community spirit. Her home, once a symbol of neglect and hardship, had been transformed into a vibrant sanctuary, reflecting not only her personal journey but also the collective strength of those around her. As she stood in her newly renovated kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows, Martha felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. The smell of fresh paint mingled with the scent of herbs she had planted in her garden, a reminder of the new life blossoming around her. With the renovations complete, Martha was more than just a homeowner, she had become a pillar of her community. Inspired by her courage, many of her neighbors joined her efforts to advocate for better working conditions at Redfield Farm. Their collective voices, once silenced by fear, now resonated with clarity and conviction. The local officials, motivated by the stories they had heard during the meeting, initiated an investigation into Henry Walter's practices, leading to the implementation of new policies that ensured fair treatment for all workers. As Martha welcomed the new changes, her friendship with Ethan and Jacob deepened. They became regular visitors, often joining her for meals in her cozy kitchen. Over shared stories and laughter, their bond flourished, transforming from mere gratitude to a genuine familial connection. Ethan expressed his desire to consider Martha's home as his second home, a sentiment that warmed her heart and solidified her sense of belonging. In the months that followed, Martha found a renewed sense of purpose. She channeled her energy into supporting her fellow workers and organizing community events that celebrated their resilience. Together, they created a support network that empowered others in the village to share their struggles and triumphs, reinforcing the idea that no one had to face hardship alone. Martha often reflected on her life, marveling at the power of kindness and how a single act of compassion could ripple outward, creating change beyond what she had ever imagined. She had once felt like a solitary figure in a relentless struggle, but now she was surrounded by love, support, and shared goals. The bonds forged through adversity became the foundation of her newfound happiness. One sunny afternoon, as Martha tended to her garden, she spotted Ethan and Jacob approaching, smiles on their faces and hands full of flowers. They had come to surprise her with a small gathering to celebrate the impact they had made together. The community, once divided by hardship, now stood united in their triumphs, reflecting the strength and resilience that defined them all. As they gathered in her yard, Martha felt an overwhelming sense of joy. This was her home, filled with laughter, love, and the knowledge that they could weather any storm together. In that moment, she knew that her journey was not just about her struggles, but about the unbreakable bonds created through compassion, resilience, and the power of community. Martha had not only found her place in the world, but had also become a catalyst for change, leaving a legacy of kindness and hope for generations to come.